It's so good to be with you all. Here we have such distinguished representatives of amazing history here at Trinity Baptist Church. And I'm wondering if you would just each begin by sharing who you are and what years you were here.
I'm Katie Hill. I came to Trinity in 1976 as Katie Hatcher and spent the summer here. There was a program through the North Carolina Baptist State Convention for summer missionaries. And I had just graduated from college and entered that program for the summer. And then after that, I was to go to seminary. So went to Southeastern Seminary, graduated, getting ready to graduate in 79 and got a phone call from Davis Bowen who said, Trinity needs somebody. Could you come for like the summer or just as an interim? And I said, Davis, I would love to do that, but I really need a job because I'm graduating next month. And so he says, I'll call you back. And I got a call back and they said, how about coming and interviewing for the positions? So I came then in 79 and came as Katie Hatcher. And then in 83, I left as Katie Hill.
You must have met someone in there.
I did.
Wonderful. And his name is Wayne.
Is Wayne Hill.
Wonderful. Well, Jeff, if we go in chronological order of the youth pastorate, you would be next.
Sure. Yeah. So I'm Jeff Roberts. I'm the senior pastor here at Trinity, but I began back in 1986 as student minister. I came also to Southeastern Seminary in need of a job. And Trinity youth pastor, who was between Katie and myself, Warren Johnson, had left to take an associate pastor position. And the church was looking for an interim and came up to the seminary to interview students. And I got chosen to come meet the committee here. And I, too, sat across the desk from Davis Bowen. And Davis Bowen made the final decision to give me the job as the interim youth minister in 1986. And Dr. Furr, our pastor at the time, told me that you will not be considered for this job. We want someone with at least 5 years experience and a seminary degree. And I said, okay, but it's a great experience for me to do this interim. And about 3 months in, he came back to me and said, this is working pretty good. Why don't you stay? And so I was the student minister while I finished seminary. I stayed a year after that and left the beginning of 91, and so to go be a pastor, and came back in 2000 as senior pastor.
Tremendous. Mm-hmm. Well, that brings us to you, Brooks.
Yes, I'm Brooks Warren, and I immediately followed Jeff as youth pastor. I started in June of 1991, right after I graduated from Southeastern Seminary. I was a part-time youth and children's minister at Athens Drive Baptist Church over near NC State during my entire time at seminary. And I wasn't going to apply to Trinity. There was a lady named Jan Manley at the time, Jan Kennemer, who was in seminary with me, who begged me over and over to give her my resume. And finally, I just handed it to her one day, and then I got the call to come and interview. And I sat across from Barbara Bowen.
Probably should have had Davis and Barbara here.
Barbara was on the committee that hired me, and I ended up starting in June of 1991, and I stayed through June of 2003. I too got married during that time too, but my name didn't change.
Well, that brings us to Dr. Andy.
So my name is Andy Jung, and I came in 2003, June of 2003, and left in July of 2014. So I followed Brooks, and I got a call from Hal Melton in the midst of doing ministry previously at a church in Concord, North Carolina, where Amy grew up. And so it was a place where we had family and friends and all of that. But when Hal called, Hal was a mentor of mine in youth ministry. And so when he called, I answered the phone and had a conversation with him. And then just came up and met with the committee here. None of the Bowens were a part of that one, but I do remember the interview. It was down in the old parlor. I sat in a seat much like this, and there was a light that was right above me. And it was turned on bright, or I just was nervous or whatever, but I sweated like a pig. And I just remember, like, oh my goodness. I don't know what happened, but they must think that I was just super nervous. But it all worked out, and I was here for 11 years. I first came as a minister of students and recreation because we were just opening up, where we had just broken ground on the rock at that time, and so I helped to plan for the opening of the building, and then ran the ministries that first year before things got really too busy for one person to handle. And so at that point in time, I moved to minister of students and administration shortly after that. So
Oh, that's a sign of tremendous growth and
That's right.
success
That's right.
by almost any
it's
measure.
great.
Is there anyone else that you haven't mentioned that may have been instrumental in acquainting you with Trinity Baptist Church?
Yeah, I don't think we want to miss speaking about Davis Bowen in particular.
Absolutely.
And Hal Melton. We've got a really interesting thing at Trinity in that Davis Bowen was over youth ministries for the state of North Carolina Baptist State Convention. And so he had a lot of experience when it comes to helping identify people. And then Hal Melton followed Davis in that same position. So we've had two individuals in the church, although they did not serve in this way, were really experts in youth ministry and really helped all of us kind of find our place.
I helped
in
bring
ministry.
Hal to this church.
Yeah, that's right. It's true. That's right. Yeah.
When Hal became our minister of education adults.
Yeah.
And I knew about Trinity because Brooks and I served on a casual planning committee together. And so Brooks and I got to know each other at that time. And then, so that's when I was first introduced to Trinity.
Terrific. Well, that helps fill in some gaps. Now, so you're either back at Trinity or Brooks, you've never left. But how do you feel, or what do you think when you see what has become of some of your young people, your youth that you worked with? You see them today. Some of you realize they're married, they have children of their own. What are your thoughts about some of them?
I have been here the whole time since 1991, because when I left to stay home with my kids. I didn't leave to go to another job. So I maybe stayed away from the church for a couple of months. Andy, with all the confidence in the world, which I was so pleased, he just said, Brooks, whenever I want you working with me if you'll help in any form. So I was able to ease back into that. But so I've watched my kids, and some of them had kids before I had kids. So so it's been interesting. I was saying before we started that there are kids that I thought would just be leaders in the church forever, and they kind of just some of them just fizzled away. And then there's kids that were just like, how in the world are they leaders in this church? But they have just stayed with it. They've grown. They're spiritually. They've done the things they needed to do to grow, and they remember what youth meant to them, and they want to give back. And so for me, it's been surprising with some of them, and others, you're like, I always knew that. And but we have some really great kids who are still in this church that are leaders now, who've led the deacons, who've led pastor advisory committee, who've served on youth stuff. And so it's been a joy to watch it. That's part of the fun of having worked with kids when they're younger, is seeing how they turn out at 40 and what they're doing for the Lord at that
It
point.
must be very fulfilling to know that you've had some kind of stamp on their lives, that the Lord has used you in a way that has made them what they are today.
Absolutely. And it was just a small part, but it's like, it's a meaningful part to know that. And And so, yeah, it's certainly fulfilling.
I think I look at some of the youth in the church and realize that they are now adults with children of their own, and their parents are still in this church as well. And I remember their parents going beyond what they had to do as a parent to get their kids here, and that they made sure that those kids were here at activities, and they chaperoned, and they were teachers. And it just makes me, it confirms in my thinking the importance of a parent's hand in their children's spiritual life.
I think one of the great things is the continuity of all this. Because when I came back as pastor, for the ones who were in my youth group, who were still here in the church, were in their early 30s. I remember being student minister and thinking they're kids, but I really wasn't that much older than they were, honestly. So when you come back at 38 and they're 32, that's a kind of thing. But anyway, the first coming back, having those individuals who've been in my youth group now as young adults in the church, I remember dedicating the first baby of one of them, and actually they handed me their child, and I whispered to them, "I can't believe y'all have a child," and they said, "We can't either," kind of thing. So anyway, so that's been great, and then to watch even though that child grow, and so that's been a wonderful part of the continuity of the ministry. And then also a lot of our senior adults now, they were the youth workers when I was here before. They're the ones that drove the bus. They're the ones that went on trips. So coming back as pastor in that situation, I had really a head start in relationships for a new pastor. You could just go right into those relationships, and there was trust that I was given that it would have taken me years to earn had I not had that past experience. So that's been a blessing to see that happen.
One of the things that we really focused on during my years of ministry here was relational discipleship. And relational discipleship really required adult leaders to buy into that idea that they needed to invest time and energy and of themselves into that. And I don't know that relational discipleship is anything new, because it's something that we've all done naturally. It comes to us naturally. But really teaching that and helping the adult leaders to understand that, I think has helped to create a sense of connection that we're kind of seeing in our churches in our church now. But it is a joy to see so many of them still connected to this church specifically, but also knowing that there are many others who have left the area, or even who are at other congregations, but have taken what we have instilled in them, taken what they've learned from the relationships that they have here, and have applied them in other congregations in other contexts, and knowing that there are many, and we can probably go around and name them, of many others who are in ministry because of the experience that they've had here. I like to say that I take zero responsibility for those that are doing well, because I don't want to take responsibility for those that are not doing so well. But it is, I think it is the relationship between the adult leaders and the students in those years more than what I did. And I really just saw myself in a lot of ways as just a administrator of the ministry that was being done, but our volunteer leaders were really the youth ministers along the way.
For the sake of the record, I think it would be good to name some of those students who have been here for so long and have continued and have then moved into leadership roles. Who are some of those people?
Randy McKinney.
There you go.
Yeah, it's a good first one.
First name that comes to my mind,
Sure.
and how, I almost feel like he's a part of his parent. The fact of how proud I am of him and what he has become and what he's done with his life. I remember running into him several years back at a conference. And when I found out he was a pastor, I just wanted to hold him and say, "You're what? You're what?" And just, it wasn't like he was never on the list of, I don't know if he's going to make it to adulthood. Because I saw in him through the years that I was with him, the potential he had and his heart.
Yeah.
When I came in 91, he along with Jan Kinnemer were the two main youth workers that I inherited from Jeff. And I didn't have Randy and Jan at the beginning. I don't know if I would have been able to do it, just because I walked in from a 20 to 30 member youth group to 100 to 110. And, you think you know what you're doing, but you don't. But Randy helped me through that too. So, but for me, I think the Mills boys, I had Adam and David. I didn't have Michael. I had Jonathan. Jonathan's at another church, but Adam and David and their wives all grew up in our church. And Adam and Jen and David and Ashley, David and Ashley are working in the youth department. Adam's a deacon. They've done things throughout the years, and so I think of them. I was real close to John Cook, and John. I don't know if he has a specific leadership role, but if you ever want John Cook to do something, John Cook's going to do it for you. And to see him being a dad now, it's just. I get emotional thinking about it, because he's just one of those kids that you just loved him because he's always there and was supportive. But that's just, there's so many. I can't think of all of them, but.
Right. Well, and I would say people like Kevin and Karen Bell, which I think probably went across all of our ministries. Randy was here as a college student when I came and was my right arm. Michael Coates was a college student when I came, and he was involved with our ministries in some ways. Holly Shaw has been a pastor advisory chair, and she's been really involved in the life of our church as well. Tanya Higgins, she's the one that I said of her and David, I can't believe y'all had a baby, and so, but she's been involved in so many ways. So there are several like that who just have stayed involved, and I did a wedding last week of a young girl that's married. I baptized her. She's marrying another young man here in our church. Her mother was one of my youth, and I led her to Christ. And so their family was here in our church for a long time before they moved to the coast. And so it was one of those, several generations, two church families, and those are just kind of privileges, right? So
Yeah, and I think about those who are serving in other congregations now. We've got a couple that come to mind are Jessica Phillips, now McDougall, that she's serving in ministry, went to the seminary and serving in ministry here at Millbrook Baptist. And then Robin Price, or Pretty, and she's serving in ministry down in Georgia. And there are others, but yeah, it is to know that there are just experiences that they had in our ministry that they that impacted them in a way that they felt a call into vocational ministry is incredible.
Yeah, and we can't can't forget Drew.
I was just saying Drew
Langdon. Drew Langdon, who's our intern, he grew up here as well, and same kind of experience. So yeah.
Well, and Debbie's daughter is in seminary also.
Victoria
Victoria
Argento. Yeah, so there are several in seminary, which is good. Yeah.
What a great impact. Now, you've worn several hats over the years. How have transitions from where you were to where you are now, how does that strike you as you look back?
Um, again, I'll start because I went from Reverend Brooks Warren to dad. And back when I did stay home with kids, there weren't any of us. There were no men doing that. And there were people at the church, some of them, there were some older men who'd say, "Hey, you babysitting your kids today?" And it just would drive me crazy. And I will say that transition for me was very difficult. I don't know, I knew it in the middle of it, but looking back on it, I do believe I actually went through some kind of depression for it because this ministry, this job, this church was part of my identity. And for now, I couldn't say, "Hey, yeah, I'm the student minister at Trinity Baptist Church." I had to just, I'm Seth and Cole's dad, and I was proud of that, but it was difficult. But Andy made it really easy for me to transition back into youth ministry, and Jeff had plenty of jobs for me to do if I wanted to do it. I did start out right out of the bat doing Sunday school director. I did that. I helped do all the transition stuff to the new building with organizing things, all that. So because I had my knowledge, I was able to do that. So after about a year, I was able to transition into lay person. And because of my experiences in youth ministry, I wanted to be involved with my kids and be the chaperone and teach Sunday school and do that because I knew the impact, like you said, the parental impact on your kids. And both my kids are still active. I mean, Seth still comes to church here. Can't get him to. He comes to Sunday school, but we're working on the other things. But that's so for me. It was a struggle at the beginning, but I think I've become a really good church member.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Yeah, I would say Brooks has become one of our great leaders in the church, and his it's a humility in him that says, okay, I don't have that role, and then he found his place and he served, and he's done so many different things administratively. He's been such a great leader. You know, I think about our relationship with our students. And so one of the most important things I think, Brooks, that you did was when you and Kevin started that young adult Sunday school class. We started a young adult Sunday school class that essentially were Brooks's youth as they came into adulthood. And because of his relationship with them, they gave it a try. They were willing to try. And so it became a very strong class in our church. And some of the people we've already named are in there. So the kind of things you did around that has just been wonderful for the longevity of the church and its ministry. And so, Brooks really is the example of someone who makes a transition to layperson the church and does it well.
As you said, there is an element of humility that's required in these various transitions and changes, and that's a great testament to all of you.
You've made multiple.
I've had multiple transitions, but I'll speak of a couple of transitions. One is my transition from here to being a pastor at First Baptist in Albemarle. I went from living here in North Hills and working and ministering here at Trinity Baptist to Albemarle, North Carolina, which is a wonderful place, but it is very different than a different setting than here in Raleigh. And so I remember my first Wednesday night at the church and traditional Wednesday night supper and pastor's Bible study after that. And I think we had about 45 people there that first Wednesday night. And average age was probably in high 60s. And God and I had a few conversations that night, wondering what in the world am I doing there, when all of my experience has been with teenagers for all of my ministry years. And so, you wonder what kind of impact, what kind of pastor I was going to be. I had a lot of questions about that, but over time, God showed exactly what exactly that God knew what he was doing in the midst of that. And then coming back to Trinity was an easy one. It was not a difficult one. I tell people all the time that I have the best job, church job in the world. Because of my other commitments, I'm not here all the time. And so I just let Jeff know when I'm not going to be here, but I have all the kind of the freedom and the flexibility to do what I need to do, both in my other roles and here at Trinity. And coming back has been a joy. Certainly, the last 18 months has been difficult in a lot of ways, and without Trinity being part of that, I don't know where we might be at that point. And so, it's just has been a source of encouragement and support, and a place where I just feel like it's home. And I just, coming back, it felt like I never left in a lot of ways.
Katie, did you have any thoughts about your transitions?
When I left here, I went into ministry in a church in New Jersey as the minister of education. That's one of the reasons I had gone to seminary in the first place. And so it was a pretty easy transition for me going into that. It was a small church, but it held the distinction of being the first Southern Baptist church in New Jersey. The church was established after the Billy Graham Crusade had come through in New York. And a group of people had found one another and established that church. So it was really easy transition. Now coming back to North Carolina, we've been back in North Carolina for, 20 years or more. And we've come back to Trinity after being here in the area for 15. And I just felt like coming back to Trinity was coming home. And it was a wonderful experience to be welcomed back rather than, why are you here? Why did you come back? And it just feels like home and like family.
That's tremendous. Which of you have met spouses while you were on staff here?
I did.
You did.
I did.
And you did, Brooks?
Yes.
That's wonderful. What was that like?
Well, Dr. Furr takes credit for it. I'll be honest, I'd been in a relationship that was long distance, and I just said, you know what, I'm done with relationships. If God wants me to be Paul, I'll be Paul. And I had decided that. And then just at a dinner one night, Dr. Furr asked me, we were at a staff retreat or something, asked me, he said, have you met anybody? I said, no, I just broke up with someone. I said, but there was this girl that walked in, and the thing that I described her, and the next thing I know, on Monday morning, he has his note card of his visit with Mandy. And he had everything about her. He knew she was a CPA, she worked for Coopers and Lybrand, all this stuff. He said, now I'm going to tell her on Sunday morning, you're going to call her. I did not call her. He fussed at me about it. I said, Dr. Furr, can you just introduce me? I said, then I'll call her. And he was going to introduce us on Sunday night, and Mandy introduced herself to me, and so that's the history of it. And got married a year later. We were quick, and been married. I shouldn't say the number because I don't even know. It's 28, I think. But I mean, it's the biggest blessing of my life. I really never thought I would get married. I was at that. I just thought, this is just too much. So I owe Dr. Furr and this church a lot.
And Katie, you met Wayne here.
I met Wayne here. I came to Trinity in 79, and I said, now, Lord, I don't want to meet anybody right now because I need to focus on ministry and getting this up and figuring out what is it I do. And about a year later, we were in church. They did the altar call, and this young man came down, and I could tell that he was emotional. And I was the only staff person there that day because for whatever reason. And so I'm the one that had to introduce him to the church and call for the vote and all of that. And I could just tell he was very emotional. And at the end, everybody came down and hello. Everyone left, and he was still there by himself. And it was Easter Sunday, and I felt so bad for him. And I said, are you with someone? Is someone? No, no, no. And so I went upstairs. I cannot believe I did this. I went upstairs and called my mother. I was still living with my parents. And I said, listen, there's this guy that's joined the church. He's really emotional. I think this has been a rededication for him, not just joining a church. And can I bring him home for lunch? Sure, no problem. So I went back downstairs and invited him to lunch. He said, well, I'm going to visit a friend in the hospital. I said, that's okay. Just eat lunch with us and then you can go. So we get in our separate cars, and this is before cell phones, and I'm halfway down the Beltline when I realize I have just told him to follow me. He has no clue where we're going. So we wind up in my parents' house. Oh, by the way, my father's a pastor, and we live in the house right beside the church. And so we pull up in the parking lot and park. And I got out and I said, I bet you wondered where we were going because we were out on Pool Road. And he said, I figured we were going out of town by the time we got onto the Beltline. And oh, by the way, it comes out later. He thought when I said, would you like to go home to lunch with us? He thought I meant my roommate, not, oh, I'm going to meet your mom and dad.
That's fast track.
It really was fast track. And the next year we were married.
That's
Wow.
awesome.
That's fantastic. Well, I'm going to throw some names out, some places. Let's think for a moment about places like Morris House or The Rock or The Underground or the Blue Bus or Computer Lab. What kind of memories come back to you as you think of some of those places?
There's no good memory about the Blue Bus.
Listen, I've got to tell you all something. Teresa Summerlin sent me a picture of the bus broken down beside the road, and she said, I think this says it all. Right here.
I didn't have the blue bus.
I know.
The eagle.
Yeah, we had that school blue bus, and it, of course, there's no school bus, no air conditioning.
No air conditioning.
Everybody had my vivid memory of that is heading somewhere like with the kids. It's full. All the windows are down because it's burning up. Nobody in their seat. Everybody's standing up on top of the seats. We just didn't think much about safety. It wouldn't go over 55 miles an hour. Michael Coates would drive it lots of times on our trips, or Charlie Overton, and you get on the interstate, and if you were going up a hill, it's not going to go but about 45 miles an hour, and it just was not much of a bus, but it was but some good memories on that bus. But by the time I left, I think y'all were getting
We got a Bluebird bus right after I got here, which was brand new, and it was a nice bus
Yes,
and everything. And then we
Did it have air conditioning?
Sometimes.
it did.
Oh, okay.
And then we transitioned to the Eagle that
Right.
kept breaking down, and I remember driving to Arkansas, and the AC went out on that, and I remember somewhere in the middle of Arkansas, I'm just laying in the aisle, just like sick, and I'm like, everybody just leave me alone. It was I literally thought I thought, if this is hell, I definitely do not want to go there, because it was horrible. It was horrible. So there's a lot of stories about buses and stuff like that that could go. You mentioned the Morris House.
Yeah.
That was something that kind of occurred during my time originally, and that house was there over, I guess it's the parking lot now, in front of the church office, that area. But I think more important than the house was that we paved. The only basketball goal we ever had was in the back parking lot back here, and we had that paved for a basketball court, and two different families donated a goal on one end and another goal on the other end. So it was the first time our boys had, and I guess our girls too, but it was mainly boys playing at the time, had a full court in front of that Morris House. And that lasted a few years until we had all the plans started to do something different. But for me, that was a really good ministry point. We would go there. If I had small group Bible study, I'd go over to the Morris house. But it really became a more recreational area for the kids just to come and hang out. I would let them come after school, play ball, Wednesdays, Sundays, and I would just be out there with them and play. And yeah, so that's one of the memories I had. I don't remember the other items you mentioned.
I was going to say, the Morris, when I left, the Morris house was just kind of empty and almost like storage for a while. But in that front yard, we would put the volleyball net up every Wednesday night, and after Bible study, we'd play volleyball out there along Six Forks Road, and we'd just have a load of kids hanging around. They wouldn't be in the house because the house was not worth going into at the time. But as far as just having the yard and space was really nice.
I'd forgotten about that. It was a volleyball court when I first came.
Exactly.
And it became a basketball. We paved it. And,
the basketball goal in the back, I put that up. That was given by Jim Goldston. Jim Goldston gave the money and had it put up back there, and so we would meet on, I think, Tuesday nights during the summer, and just whoever showed up, and it'd just be a little 3-on-3 kind of thing out there. So, but you got a better one. Andy got a really good one. So
I did get a good one. It was really nice. The rock was built, like I said, just a year after I got here. So we got to open the rock, and the gym is a state of the art. Still is. Still is. And so really was fortunate in that way. I think underground happened or was created during my time. It was named by Dr. Roberts right here. He does get credit for the naming of the space. And it's a good name. It's a good name. I always now I go around the country and talk to other churches, and I always joke that that the youth get either the basement or the attic, which is probably true in most churches, and so we got the basement, which is now the underground.
But the basement was the preschool.
It was the preschool at that time, yes, and it was the original fellowship hall.
It was fellowship hall because that's where my wedding reception was.
So it was, but it was great space for us, and
still is.
I'm thrilled that it's getting a facelift, even as we speak right now. So, but it was a great space for young people to be able to gather together, and lots of great memories and experiences happen and continues to happen in that space.
And Katie, I understand that you were the first to be married in the so-called
The new sanctuary.
The new sanctuary.
Yes.
It must have been a great feeling.
It was. It was a nail-biting experience because when the pews came in, they found out that the red transferred onto your pants when you sat down on it. So they had to send a lot of them back. And so it was down to the wire before they got some pews in there, and not all of them, not all the pulpit furniture, just a lot that was not complete. But my philosophy was, I'm standing, you can stand. We're not going to be here that long anyway. So we were able to do that.
The facilities have sort of evolved over the years.
Yeah, because see, I don't even know that these guys realize that we used to have 2 separate buildings, and from go to that building to this building, you had to go outside.
I've always said that's one of the great signs of this church's vision, because it would be hard to have a building, and you want to build your permanent sanctuary, and you don't do that first, and you build another education wing and believe that you're still going to fill that space in. That a lot of churches can't do that, and Trinity really has always had vision that way, and that's just one of those examples that they stayed true to what they believed was going to happen. So,
what have been or are now your favorite spaces here on the campus?
I'm always one who speaks first because everybody sits there and thinks forever. But for me, I came from a smaller church, and the Sunday school area, when I first came, I mean, it was different than it is now. We had sixth grade boys, sixth grade girls, seventh grade boys. So there was different classrooms and then an opening meeting room. So many of my best memories of working with the kids were in those bigger meeting rooms where you just break down all the chairs and they sit on the floor and you do a Bible study with them. And you could have 40 kids up against the wall sitting and doing. And a lot of Wednesday nights were that way for me. And so for me, I still have, and I teach up in that department now. I still have fond memories of walking up there because every Wednesday I would go up there at like, I don't know, 2 o'clock in the afternoon, I'd break down all the chairs and sit them in a separate classroom so there'd be room for all the high schoolers to sit on the floor. And for me, it just still brings back great memories of just kids sitting around studying the Bible in the middle of a room with not a lot of space, but we just did it. And then when Andy came, they did some reorganization where some of those rooms are bigger now, but they're not used the same way. But that's how I remember them. So.
Yeah, I would say the same thing, Brooks. That was a special place because when I came, that building had just been completed when I became the youth minister, and so all that was brand new, and I've always thought, I mean, we do kind of joke, the youth got the underground or youth got the basement, but the truth is, Trinity has a long history of putting the students high in the pecking order of budgeting, support, resources. I've never known anything in the life of this church when if the students needed it or the youth needed it, the church did not provide it. And so you build a brand new building, but who do you put on the primary space? The youth. That says something. And so sometimes up there, for me too, on Wednesday nights, just sitting in a circle
Absolutely.
with our Bibles out, having discussion, those were special times. They were.
And in addition, there have been some special summer trips to Caswell, Passport. Any special memories associated with those trips or any trips in particular?
Well, I have to tell you a funny story about Caswell. First year we went to Caswell for summer camp, and I told them that here's the time that you need to be back at the house because we'll have devotions. And I will see you. Does everybody understand what time? Everybody got that. So the day went on and the night came in and it was time for devotions. And I had several that were not there. So I just went on and did devotions. And in the back of my mind, I'm thinking, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? Because you're going to lose control of this if this starts. This is the first night we're here. So after devotions, those that had crept in late, and my heart was just beating in my throat. And I said, so-and-so, 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 and so-and-so, you all come with me. And everybody, it got so quiet in that room. And so I said, all the rest of you, go do what you're going to do. And I walked them across that campus to the payphone. And the first one, I said, call your parents. And all the rest of them in that line looked at one another. I said, call them. So they called them. And when they said, Mom, I said, give me the phone. And I took it and I said, everything's okay. They're fine. But I just need you to know something. Here's what's happened tonight. Let me talk to him. And so I gave the phone back. She wants to talk to you again. I said, do you want us to come to get him? I said, no. Actually, I think we're going to have a really good week. And so the word got out very quickly that she will call your parents. Are you going to have to go home? No, but she'll call your parents. And after that, everything went really well. And I always remember that, thinking, the feeling that I had of what am I going to do with this situation? How am I going to take care of it, but not be an ogre about it. Mm-hmm. But we can't be out here all week dealing with this.
You set a tone.
Yeah, and and from then on, everything was fine because I'm the one that found a staffer there and found out they knew how to shag. And I said, can you teach my kids how to shag? So we had a big room, and we announced that anybody wants to come and learn, come on over here and we'll do that. So I wanted to be the fun person, but I also wanted them to know that she does have a line that you cannot cross.
Did you all have to establish that little line?
Oh my gosh.
Nah.
Oh,
Yeah.
I don't think you could survive in youth ministry if you didn't have a line. You have to have a line, and there has to be the kids have to understand that, and but yeah. But I mean, I think about trips. I mean, in 12 years, I took a lot of trips.
Yeah.
And back when I first came, everything was done twice. So in the fall, I would do a fall retreat for the middle schoolers. I'd do a fall retreat for the high schoolers. I'd do a ski trip for the middle schoolers. I'd do a ski trip for the high schoolers. Spring, same way. And so I was doing a lot of trips. But I mean, I can't say there's one that just stands out. I love going to Castle because I helped plan a lot of those. Always made me nervous when I wasn't on the planning committee because I had to try to get spots for 95 kids to go to Caswell, and you had to have it postmarked on January 1. I literally would go down to the main post office on January 1 and hand it and say, I need this postmark day. Now, when they created the machines you could postmark in your, I was like, that's the best invention ever. I can postmark this January 1 actually in the office. That was a big, but I would, you did it too.
Yeah. When I came here, I didn't know. I'm from Tennessee. I didn't know what Caswell even was.
Yeah.
And I remember Davis Bowen said, "You know, you got to have your registration in for Caswell the first year." Because this was around November. I was being hired, and I thought, I don't know what are we talking about, kind of thing. So he explained to me Caswell was the camp, and we went there for summer camp, and it was a great tradition. I mean, I inherited that from UCadian people. They loved that. They looked forward to that. We would take a load of kids down there. Had the registration. Kids who wanted to meet me would meet me on New Year's Eve. We would get in the van, and we would drive. And the parents would let them go with me, and we would drive to the post office. We would hold it up like it's like sacred or something, and at 12 midnight we would put it in the slot and have a celebration kind of thing. So
I would literally
it was such a big deal to have it in on time.
I would literally go to the back door and knock on it and hand it to somebody. I said, I need it postmarked today. I wouldn't even put it in a mailbox.
Yeah,
I was so nervous about it not getting postmarked January 1.
Yep, because it was so important to the church and to the kids to go. And we had this huge group that had to have space.
Right.
And it made it hard.
There's really only one building.
Yeah, it made it harder. We had to have
The whole summer hinged on it.
Exactly. Yeah. If we'd not gotten in, it wouldn't.
No, and you kind of lived in fear that you may not get your kids in.
Exactly.
You knew if you didn't get it in.
It was a whole month and a half of waiting for that thing. Like, oh my gosh, please get in.
Because it was like, if you don't get into this, you might as well just resign.
I know exactly. Yeah, exactly.
That's exactly what I was thinking.
We all felt that way.
Felt the pressure of that. But I remember when I first came here, my very first trip was back when I first came. Everything revolved around youth choir.
Yeah.
Youth ministry was around youth choir, and it was the year it was just a choir trip, and they were doing Friends, the musical.
Yeah.
And like 2 weeks prior to going, Jonathan Mills backed out, and he had a singing part and a speaking part in it. And I was 25 years old, and I looked like I was 16. And Bob comes up to me and he said, Brooks, I need you to do that part. I said, what are you talking about, Bob? He said, I need you to play the part of the kid and sing and do all this. I thought, you've got to be kidding me. And I went on that first trip. We slept in people's houses, like strangers' houses. I think Brad Bowen was my roommate. We would go and we had single beds in this old lady's house, and that's what we did. And I thought, what am I doing here?
Younger than you.
Like, this is like, and then I had to get up and sing Friends in front of everybody and spell out Friends for some spiel I had. And I thought, I was like, did Jeff have to do this? I was like, what is going on?
I think I was actually the professor of Friends. But I think we ought to say something about Bob Shaver and his trips, because we all experienced Bob. Bob Shaver, our longtime music minister, did have an incredible youth choir.
He did.
Large youth choir, and he would take them everywhere on a tour each year. And sometimes that was the trip. It was the youth choir performing, and then us doing mission work during the week. And the one that kind of I remember, a typical Bob trip, at least in my mind, we went to Akron, Ohio. We worked with the local church there. We did vacation Bible school during the day. We did some other things in the afternoon. But every every moment was filled with something. There was no time for anything but what was on the schedule. And I mean, so we did the, SeaWorld, we did the Football Hall of Fame, we drove to Cleveland, went to a Cleveland's Indians game. Probably did something on the way back. And my funniest thing I remember about Bob wouldn't get permission to sing at these places. We would just be at SeaWorld. And he would say, okay, time to sing. And he would just gather them all together and hit a cassette thing and make them sing without any permission to do it whatsoever. But the kids did it. It was kind of crazy. But but I just think about those trips. And honestly, I liked those trips in a lot of ways because I wasn't the one in charge. So I just got to go and be with the kids, and that was kind of nice. So, but you all done all the Bob trips too. So you've done more.
I did more than anybody.
Yeah, that's right. You did. Yeah.
I helped Andy.
Yeah.
No, but I would, when it was every other year, it was mission choir together, and then it would just be choir and casual. But on the mission trip, I ended up being in charge of all of that stuff, and Bob did the choir stuff.
I think for me, I remember a lot of so many trips, but I think it was during my years that we did probably more of the international or outside the contiguous U.S. Type trips. One that stands out the most was the year that we went to Peru, and we took a lot of students. Matter of fact, I went twice that summer. One trip with the college students and one trip with the high school students. And I don't want to say how much money we spent that summer, but the generosity of this church and the work that we did throughout the year in preparation for that summer really allowed that to happen. And some of the experiences that we still talk about when I see many of those young people who went on that trip, it was impactful, not just to see a different part of the world, but to experience a different culture and the shared experience that they have with one another in that place. Will always be a highlight for me and for many others.
Fantastic. Are there any special traditions or anything that you established during your tenure that you could say ended up sticking and lasts even now?
There's one that none of them liked.
Yeah.
The live nativity at Christmas. That we started that where we had nativity scene build, would stand there and sometimes I think we did it outside at one point, but just for our church, and we'd have it in the narthex area, and the seniors in the high school, and everybody could come by and it's just kind of a visual as everybody was there, like using the Sunday or so before Christmas. But so I did start that. That's one.
My son Seth played baby Jesus, and then 18 years later played Joseph.
That's a great story, yeah.
I know right before I left, I started Northbound.
Mm-hmm.
Andy expanded on that greatly and has made it, it's a whole different thing, because I had to start it on Sunday nights because of the way the programs were. But I remember that. The one that I get blamed for is the sex ed retreat. And I did start that. And there was a reason. I don't know what it is now, but it has become a tradition to do that. And I think it's still, they've changed it to Choices now, which is a much better name.
I think something that you started, if I'm not mistaken, was the senior letters. And did you not start that?
Yeah, I did. We did that at
the end of the summer.
Yeah.
The last casual night, the seniors would read a letter to the rest of the group, and that was it was hours, and it was an emotional time. And I know that continued with you, and I think with you as well, right? Yeah. So
we still do. We still try to. We don't go to casual anymore, but on whatever the major trip is, the seniors have senior speeches. So we try to do that still.
I don't know that there's any specific tradition. I did carry on a lot of traditions that were here, which is great. One of the things that you learn in ministry is that when things are going well, you don't really mess with it, and some things do become a not a sacred cow, but do become memories that people want to experience, and want. We have parents who want their children to experience those. So one of the traditions I killed was Caswell. We talked a lot about Caswell, and things have changed. Things changed over the years with leadership in Caswell, and some of the things that were happening. And so it was my second year that I was here that we ended up changing and not going to Caswell. And boy, I got some heat.
Survived.
I got some heat for that, but we did survive because we had a specific reason for that change. I think the thing that has stuck around that I helped to begin was D teams. The D. Most people think that the D actually stands for discipleship, but it didn't at the beginning. It actually stands for Delta, which math major, and so Delta means change, and so we wanted that small group experience to change our young people, and it has served its purpose well over the years, and it still continues. So,
In summing up, just briefly, what's one thing the Lord impressed upon you in working with young people?
I will say just relationships that have lasted a lifetime. The adults who are now 50 in this church, who were in my youth group, there is just a little different relationship. It's just different. The affection toward one another, the sense of we've been in this for a long time together, it's just different. And so, if you have a good youth experience, you love your youth minister for the rest of your life. And I think that's been a blessing, for me.
I just realized how much grace is out there, because I made a lot of mistakes. I was young trying to do this, and I know I messed up quite a bit, but this church and God himself gave me a lot of grace, and he still used me. And I do think the long-term relationships, because I still have, a lot of the kids that are my friends. We talk about John Cook and Kevin Bell, and they're my friends. Wes Thomas and some of those there. So you look back and you don't realize how God used you in the midst of it, but you look back. I can look back now and go, God was working through me in that moment. I didn't realize it at the time. So I think those two things, grace and just the ability to look back and see where God was working.
And I've got to agree with that. And the Lord's been bringing that to my mind recently when I encounter my kids that are now bringing their children to Sunday school. I think, there was just so much grace expressed to me that when you're blundering through youth ministry, you don't recognize it at that particular time, but especially the tolerance and the grace that parents extended to me. And I know I made mistakes. I know I did not handle situations like it would have been better had you done this. But just how gracious they've been through my ministry, and now even the fact that I've never been stopped in the hallway and said, by the way, I want to talk to you about something. You did that then. And they very well could have. But yeah, God's grace in all of it.
My experience here as a youth minister really is something that I look back and point to as a time that really cultivated my my understanding of why I was even created in a lot of ways. Um, I don't think it was until I was 45 or so. So just a couple years ago, that that I could even articulate what my calling is, and now I know without a shadow of a doubt that my calling is young people, that I got to experience and gain so much knowledge and experience here at Trinity before going off, and and my love for the church. I think those are two things that my calling is to bring those two together, young people and the church. And I have the privilege now of doing that at a national and even global level, of going and training others and researching ways in which we can do that better in the Big C Church. But it all started right here, and the experience that I got here at Trinity that cultivated that passion.
What a tremendous blessing to hear from all of you. And I'm sure I speak for countless hundreds and hundreds in thanking you for your service and for your faithfulness to God's calling upon your life. We're all grateful. We're all still experiencing the impact of your faithfulness to God's call. May He bless you. I'm sure you will all hear, "Well done, thou good and faithful servants."